Hello and welcome to Groove Box Design. In this video, we're going to talk about how we can create three components that can lock a box together so that it won't come apart. There's three pieces you can see here. Let's go through them and then we'll talk about how it's designed. So the first piece you can see is this key piece here. And the way that it would work is it rotates in place till it's perpendicular with this edge or parallel with the sides here. And then essentially it would slide up. And as you can see, the lid has a matching key design as this piece does as itself. And then the other component is the box lid itself actually will be able to slide in place. So essentially this groove that's in here will make it so that the lid will not move up and down. So it'll slide in to lock it in that way. And then the key will come down, you rotate it, and then it can't slide this way. So that essentially would keep it from moving. So let's firstly take a look at the box, how it's designed, and go from there. Now that we have the box open, let's take a look at what makes the design of this box work. The first thing I did is I designed a box, and then I made the wall thickness of 1/8 of an inch on 3 sides and 1/2 inch on the side where the keyway is going to be. But the first portion that we're going to actually go through is the actual groove for the lid. So the way that I designed this is I took half of the wall thickness, 1/8 of an inch, both in depth and height for this lid holder portion. I then angled it by 45 degrees because that's a nice angle to use for printing. And then I made it 0.1875 of a height, and that just gives you a nice area for your lid to slide into. So that's the first piece that we designed for this portion. The other part is the groove for the keyway. First thing I did was made this 0.135, which is 1/10 bigger than 1/8 of an inch, and I cut that through down to about 1.5 inches in depth. You could go shallower. I just use it as an example for this to give you a better viewpoint. The next thing I did is I made a line that intersects the center point of the diameter of this hole, and I made it offset by 45 degrees on both lines that go through there, and then I did half of that along this center line as well, and then that makes it so it's centered, and it gives you a good datum point for the next portion that we're going to do, which is the other cutaway. So then I did this extrusion down the whole path of that hole to start off with. Next, what I did is I made a second piece, which is how the key will lock into place. So as you can see here, I continued that diameter and then I offset it 22.5 degrees, which is half of 45 from this angle here, to allow it to go 90-degree rotation to lock that key in place so that it won't come out once it's all put together. And then to give you a idea of what that would look like afterwards, let's just take a quick look before we go to the lid design. So as you can see here, there is a bit of a cutaway for the piece to be used with that keyway. Now we're going to go to the lid. With the lid, it's a lot simpler of a design. The first thing I did is I just went and took all the dimensions that I used for the box itself, and I made them slightly smaller, so 1/10 smaller in some areas, but then I made the overall height the exact same. And this just allows for a little bit of gapping so that you can actually slide the piece in place when designing the lid. So that is the first thing I did, and then I extruded it to be the same distance for the box itself. Then I copied the dimensions I made for that keyway, and lastly I made a bit of a groove, a countersink hole, and that's just to fit the key so it looks a little bit more flush in there. Purely cosmetic, you don't have to do that, but I just chose to do that for this design. So let's take a look at the key and then we'll be done. So here's the key, and what I did with this portion is when I first designed it, I made it 1/8 of an inch, which is 1/10 smaller than the hole that's on the box and the lid. And I made it the same depth as the combined dimension of the lid and the box together. So this allows this key to go all the way down into that groove. Next, I did the same thing for the keyway portion. I made this 1/4 of an inch instead of the 0.26, and then I did the 45 degrees. And that'll allow it to slide in quite nicely without having too many problems. And then I also extruded that up to a dimension of 0.49, which is 10th smaller than the 1/2 inch that I made, just to give a little bit more wiggle room when you're putting that piece in. One thing you might have to do, depending on your fits, if you're having issues, is change the degrees. So let's say we made this 44.5 instead of 45. If you're having any issues with it fitting, that's something to think about. And lastly, I made this portion here the same height as the countersink on the lid, and then 10th smaller for the diameter. And then I also made a little bit of a thumb grip for when it's aligned inside the box so that you can twist it. So the last thing we can do is take a quick look at what this key looks like when it's actually in the box itself, so that you can get an idea of how it would look when turned. To make that a little easier to see, you can see that it'll rotate and hit as it goes to there, and then rotate to here to be pulled out. So hopefully that helps. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments. Otherwise, this is Tyler with 3D Printer Store, and I hope you have a great day.